Well, welcome back to the Pastor Pod. Man, I'm excited about today's podcast. If you are new with us, the Pastor Pod's just a bunch of leaders getting together, talking about church, leadership, ministry, and we're on for another great conversation. Today's going to be a special one, Jay. And if you're watching on YouTube, you'll know who is on the podcast. But if you're listening, you don't know yet who's joining us. Man, I'm excited. This is going to be fun today.
Right. We have two special women. One is married to you. One is married to me. We have Holly, my wife, and your wife, Cassidy. And when Cassidy starts talking, you may recognize the voice from the intro. She welcomes you every single week to the Pastor Pod. And I think, honestly, the thing that baffles me is we did not at any point discuss anything about what this podcast was going to look like or anything. But when our wives showed up today, they are matching to it. if you're watching the pod, you can't make this stuff up. Josh is gonna post. I'm sure we'll post a photo.
Yeah,
like you cannot make this up. That they dressed and black shirt, white. What is that? A cardigan? What is that? I don't know what that is. Cardigan. I don't know what it is. I'm wearing a hoodie. But they are dressed exactly like they both have blonde hair. It's kind of creepy, maybe in a little way of thinking that all wives dress alike. There's like a uniform. It's
the pastor wife uniform, apparently.
I was gonna say that on the podcast, and not all pastor wives are the same, but we pointed out.
But you have great style. That's right. You got great style.
Style is you guys are spot on.
Code.
That's right.
And so. Listen, Josh, it's Mother's Day is coming up this weekend. And I can't think of two better people to have on the podcast to talk not only about just various different things, but specifically today we're going to get to hear what pastors' wives really think about stuff. And so really, really excited about that. And so without further ado, I think we should kick things off. And I think we'll start with Cassidy, if it's okay. Man, I just want to give you guys a chance to introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Maybe some things that you really, really enjoy, things that you maybe don't enjoy, whatever you want to go with here. And don't be afraid, Cassidy and Holly, don't be afraid to really unload on what it's like to be married to the two of us weird jokers who probably stress you guys out more than we want to acknowledge. So that being said, Cassidy, tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, how long do we have? I'm Cassidy, and I have the honor to be married to Josh. And Jay and I are from the same hometown. I'm from Ocala, Florida, actually Summerfield, and only Jay knows where that is. And I'm in my early 30s for a couple more days until I turn 35 on Mother's Day. And I have three wonderful children, Micah, who's 9, Hannah is 8, and Chloe's 4. And they are who I spend most of my time with these days. But before that, I still really enjoy music, writing music, singing, listening to music. I am also a photographer part-time, so I get to interact in the community, and it's a great way to just get to know people and to capture beautiful moments, which I love. I love being creative and doing all things creative. I love reading. I love spending time at the beach. Long walks.
By the way, you post way too many beach photos. It makes people that live in just gonna go out there and say that, like, Josh has gotten really honest and said he posts them just for me. But yeah,
it worked apparently.
Yeah, I just really miss you, so that's what it is.
Well, Cassidy, I know our listeners are thrilled to meet you, and I'll go out and just say alongside of every pastor, there is typically a pastor's wife who is there to make sure they stay in line, because we tend to not do that. But Holly, why don't you introduce yourself to all of the amazing listeners here at the Pastor Pod?
Well, I'm Holly, and
where'd you grow
wonderful
up?
Privilege of being married to Jay. I grew up in the middle of nowhere in Marianna, Florida, in the Panhandle. I met Jay when he was going to BCF in Graceville, and we went to the same church at the time.
I was her youth pastor.
Okay.
That gets really
That's
weird.
not- that's I need to know more.
That's amazing.
I need to
That
understand.
gets really, really weird, doesn't it?
What?
That's okay.
No.
I was just graduated youth group when I met Josh, and he was.
Whoa, you were in college.
Okay,
then.
so see,
We were in
So this is
kind of the same.
real awkward all of a sudden. I technically met you when you were in high school, but we didn't start dating until after she graduated.
that's true.
Okay, so sorry about that. Thank you.
That's right.
Yeah, so we've been married for 16 years and we have 5 kids.
You want to name
Michaela,
them?
yeah, I do. Michaela's 14. Adeline is 11. Louis is 11. Zachary is 9. Rhett is 5. And
So-
I have stayed at home with all of them from the very beginning. And this fall will be the first time that they all go to school. And it'll be quite a different time for me.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's gonna be great and it's gonna be kind of sad at the same time. Yeah. So as far as what I enjoy, I love reading. Kids probably take up most of my time. Yeah. What do I do for fun? I feel like I don't want to read for fun, but yeah.
You do a lot of fun
I
things.
do. Yeah.
Laundry, dishes.
All the mom stuff. Yes. All the mom stuff.
So one thing I'll say this about my wife that no one else will really know is I would say it's safe to say you're an introvert. Is that accurate?
Yeah, for sure.
But she is one of the funniest introverts I've ever met, and most people don't get to see that side of her remarks and her dry humor and things like that. And so she really underplays herself, but she's a ton of fun. So I will say that. But anyhow, Josh, these are our brides. These are the ones that we get to hang out with, lock arms with, and do ministry with each and every week, each and every day. They see us at our worst moments. They see us at our best moments as well. But really, I want to punt to you guys. It's really all about you guys sharing with us today. And so, what is it like being married to a pastor? What is that like? Is it what I'd be curious to know is it what you thought it would be, or how is it different than what you thought it would be when you knew you were marrying a pastor? And don't be afraid to talk about the highs, the lows, the good times, the bad times, all those things. Be as transparent as possible. We really do want transparency. So
Holly, you go ahead.
go ahead.
You go first.
She wants to see how bad joke goes. And then she's like, okay, now I know what it feels like.
When I think about being married to the pastor, I think about specifically our church, which is a church that we planted 6 years ago.
Almost 7.
Wow.
Yeah,
it's been a long time. So that's might be a little bit different than an established church, but I think it feels to me like when you have people at your house and you're always hosting, like you're always the one trying to make sure everyone is comfortable, everyone has what they want, they have all the food they need, they have a place to sit, they have the job they want to do or the place to serve, and then you kind of get the leftovers. You just make sure everybody else is happy. And then you take your spot. And that's kind of what it feels like to me. I'm not complaining or saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that's kind of how it feels. And you're always not putting on a show, but like hosting and making sure the conversation is, you're talking to everyone and things like that.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Sorry, I feel like my chair's creaking. And then other than that, some of the highs and lows, I kind of think the same answer to both questions. You see everything and hear everything, and it's really great. A lot of the stuff is really really amazing to see and hear, and I'm really grateful that I get to see and hear all the wonderful things that God's doing in everyone's life, because when you're a church member, I think you kind of have your little circle, your little group, and you know what's going on with those people. But when you're the pastor's wife, you kind of hear about everybody and everything and all the miracles God's doing in people's lives and things that you get to hear about like the whole church, especially when you like for us for Milestone, like for every person that walks in the door, I'm like, how did you even hear about us? Like, how did you even know about us? And it's cool to hear those stories and then to get to know them and their lives and how they came to know the Lord and things going on in their lives. It's just really cool. But also, I mean, there's the downside to that is that you hear everything. You hear all the complaining. I mean, Jay filters a lot of that. So I don't have to hear it all. But I mean, you do hear enough to where it's like people there. I mean, there's still Karens everywhere, you know, male and female. I don't know what the male Karen is. But
there's a lot of Karens out there. I agree.
Chris, no, I'm just kidding.
And she threw Karen out. There we go.
You know,
Karen's already out there.
No, I'm not talking about Karen. Like I said, you're gonna have to filter.
No, it's good. It's good. That's true.
But everywhere, there's the Debbie Downers if you want to go old school, and you have to just kind of learn to just let those things roll. And to get past it. And it takes a while. It's a learned thing, and you have to learn that a lot of that's just talk and people venting and taking out their frustrations on your husband for no reason. But yeah.
All right. So for some reason, Karen and Debbie always get the stick.
Those poor names.
Right. So Karen and Debbie.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So Cassidy, I want to hear from you.
Yeah. What it's like to be a pastor's wife. I thought Holly summed that up so well. I've always heard the analogy of it being like a glass house, being married in ministry, but I'd never heard of the hosting aspect. And that felt more true. I feel like it does feel like you always have people. There's times when they're all sleeping maybe, or, you know, they go back home, but you do feel like you're putting on for a big group. I would say I didn't come from a background of being in a ministry family. So for me, my call to ministry was when I was 16 and I felt called to ministry. Not every pastor's wife, I think, feels that call. You know, they might marry their husband and then he's called, or it's different circumstances. So for me, it's always been the call God's had on my life. And I have had to deal with my own insecurities. When Josh felt called to be a pastor, I was more hesitant because of my own insecurities. I knew he could do it, but I just wasn't sure that I was called. I'm called to be his wife, but was I called to be a pastor's wife?
Was that when I was youth pastor, or is that?
Well, when we first met, we met in Bible college,
Yeah.
and I was called to ministry, and I really wrestled with it when we were dating, what that would mean. He was already a youth pastor when I met him, and I was like, oh, it's more serious than the ministry. I felt called to music, and I thought that would look differently than being in that pastor's wife role, you know? So I went through that struggle of my own. Do I have what it takes? And then when we did get married and he was a youth pastor, I felt like there was, well, that's, you know, the youth pastor role. There's a little more, people
Grace,
give you more
maybe.
grace.
Yeah.
And when he felt called to be a pastor, I wrestled and fought him on that. And God really had to soften my heart and say, just follow him wherever I lead him. And really, the more I've followed Josh and the less I focus on myself, I feel like I'm able to walk in where God's called me and both of us as a couple. But so I try to look at ministry as, you know, as an individual and where God's called and gifted me to serve. So it's interesting because sometimes I'll forget even my own role. People will introduce me as, this is my pastor's wife. And I promise it takes me aback almost every time. I'm like, oh, I thought I was just their friend. And I feel, and
well,
I'm
you
like,
are their friend, but you're going, is that
am.
what I am to you first? Or,
Exactly.
you know, it's
like I'll
that.
forget, maybe that is how they view me, you know, like that is, I have a role. And I do want to walk in the responsibility of that role, because I feel like there is something to be said about that. You judged a little more, you know, there's a microscope on you. And I do feel that weight, but I don't walk in that, I think, daily, wondering what people are thinking about me. And I try to live free. You know, I try to live saved by grace, free in Christ, and try to represent that in my own life. But because I'm telling you, growing up, the pastor's wife to me was up here and I am down here. If in my mind, it's like Mother Teresa, me. So, and I think I just had to let a lot of that go. And I still do. I still battle that insecurity of not having what it takes, but people are like, I love being in ministry because we all need Jesus. And at the end of the day, that's what it's about. And I think if I can keep that perspective, then I'm more healthy as a pastor's wife.
That's good. That's good. And I've heard the glass. What did they told us during marriage counseling? They told us something about a globe or a glass. Fishbowl. A fishbowl.
Oh yeah, fishbowl.
Yes.
Ministry in a fishbowl because everybody can see everything, and so I've heard that illustration too. I had never heard the hosting one as well, and so thank you guys for sharing a little bit about what it's like to peel back the layer and see what's behind the door when it's like what it's like to be married to a pastor. And I will say it is interesting, and I give grace to all. Youth pastor wives are special people. I was a youth pastor, and Holly knew me as a youth pastor as well. And there's lots of not that there's not with pastors, but I know with youth pastors, the extra long nights and the extra long days and the camps where you're gone for we used to dread those at times. It's like, man, this is so long. And our first ministry position as a married couple was a youth pastor. What was in Texas. And we were married. How long were we married? 6 months before we moved to Texas. We didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
And we didn't know anybody. And so I had to see Holly kind of learn what that was like as well, because again, it's new territory. It's new territory for everybody. And so, and listen, I think a lot of churches do have this weird view of what a pastor's wife is supposed to do in the church, supposed to act like or be like. What do you guys think? Do you guys think there's that
it's almost like unspoken though, right? Like it's like,
yeah,
like my mom, I grew up, my mom is a pastor's wife, and she plays piano, and she's excellent connecting with people. She learned piano as a little girl, but it's like kind of that thought process of like, well, if you're the pastor's wife, you need to do XYZ. You're the piano player, or you're the kids director, or you're the fill in the blank, whatever it is. Or it might be that specific church, what they think the pastor's wife should do. So I've got a lot of views on that, but I wanted to hear from you two, because I don't know what that feels like. We're the ones typically full-time being hired. Of course, pastors' wives it's great when they're on the team and on staff as needed and where they feel called. But how does that feel? Because you are kind of grandfathered into the church just because that's what happens. Do you feel that pressure? Do you feel like there's like a real narrow view of that, or do you feel like, no, I can serve wherever God's called me to serve in the church and the way I'm gifted and all that?
I think it's different for a church plant.
Yeah, I was going to say
for the last 7 years.
Holly said it. She said it's different when you're the founders of the church. Like I really do think I loved that when we planted the North Campus in Jacksonville. I felt like there was no expectations because they had nothing to compare me to.
There was nobody there.
Yeah. So it was like, you're just
we're praying some people show up.
And the Mudd family filled in all the gaps. Like we did.
Exactly. You played every role.
There was nobody. I was the greeter and the pastor that day, or I did.
That's right. I'm the sweeper. I'm the mopper. Yeah.
I think there can be expectations when you're stepping into a role that has already been, like someone else has already had that pastor's wife position, and you're stepping in. And I think the church body probably does have a little expectation, like, is she, going to do what the last pastor's wife did? And if you don't, are you letting them down? And that kind of thing. I know I walked into that here, just, hoping that I would be accepted for who I am, knowing that I'm probably a unique individual, and I am a unique individual, but that, I would be accepted for whatever strengths I brought and whatever weaknesses would be given grace for. And I think there can be unspoken things. I've learned that as I've been here. I've learned, a little bit more about the other pastor's wife that was here before, actually. And people just are open about things to the pastor's wife that I think they wouldn't say to other people.
Mhm.
So you learn a little bit of the behind the scenes of things, like you were saying, Holly.
Yeah.
That's very true. They will say things to the pastor's wife they may not say, because they're talking, what they're doing is they're trying to talk to the pastor through the wife.
What do you call that? Is it like phone a pastor through your wife?
Phone up.
I don't know what it is. It's like, they say something and just passing, and it's just like, yeah, I know that I get to them because they're going to talk. And then, I don't know. I'll say this, Josh, you said this, you had this conversation. I remember distinctively, and I'm not going to name the church, but there was a church that we interviewed at where we went on the interview, and they were hiring me as a youth pastor. And we had a little, how old was Michaela? She was probably 2 years old at that time. And, a 2-year-old is, you never know what you're going to get. You could get the monster that the 2-year-old can be, or you could get the angel that everybody wants to run to. And that's just saying 2-year-olds or 2-year-olds or toddlers, right? And I know at that time, Michaela was a handful, and Holly had taken her on a walk while I was interacting with some people and, shaking hands and getting to know people and things like that. And the church was like, hey, yeah, we want you to be our youth pastor and all that. And I got this call from the pastor that night afterwards. And the pastor came in and sat down, and the pastor looked at me and just said, hey, we noticed your wife was just off with your daughter and not interacting the way, most of our wives do. And so we just want to know if this is a common practice. And I was floored. We want transparency. I was floored. I was just like, this is not happening right now.
Yeah.
There was anger. There was all frustrations. There was like, really? This is happening right? That I had a 2 year. So there is this persona, that there is this expectation that
there is
wives or staff wives have to meet. And whether we want to acknowledge it or not, there is this expectation. And I think, Cassidy, I want to commend you for saying something, because it was very, very true. And it's this idea that you are uniquely created. The Bible tells us we're all hand knit. We're knit together in our mother's womb. God uniquely put all of us together with gifts and talents. And I think we need to be careful. This is a lesson for all of us as pastors. For us pastors who are going to hire other staff, we need to be very careful on the expectations we put on people. And remember, when we're calling, yes, it is a family call to go somewhere and do something. But at the end of the day, everyone's different, and they may not meet the same expectations as everybody else. I think it's really important we talk about that.
Yes. I'm sorry, Holly. That would crush me. Honestly, I am.
At the time, I didn't even know it happened.
I think I filtered it. I think I filtered that one. That was a filter.
Good call, Jay.
Yeah. I think she knew about it, but I don't think I told her that day.
And
I think it was afterwards.
I think I had a headache. I don't remember.
Sure.
Yeah. Being in the best.
But I'm just being transparent. It's like that's honestly some of the areas that we end up with. And so I think it's important that they hear that from you guys. That I think, Holly, have you ever had this weird feeling where you didn't fit the mold of a pastor's wife?
Yeah, so I had the same experience as you, Cassie. Growing up, like, pastors' wives were amazing. They sang, they played, they were super chatty with everyone, and even in ministry with you, pastors' wives have just been like super women, and it's I think you feel the most pressure to be a good pastor's wife when you're not the lead pastor's wife and you're just on staff from other staff members, if that makes sense, from like the people higher up. Because there's not many, ministry's unique. There's not many jobs that your husband gets that you also have expectations for. Everybody else just kind of goes to work every day. And, your ministry, it's 100% both of you, whether people say it or not. But I have loved being at Milestone church planting and having no expectations. It's been great. And just being able to be myself has been wonderful. And I know that when other people have come on staff at Milestone and their wives, I remember asking you specifically, what do you expect out of me? And I really loved your response. You said, just be a good church member. Like,
Mhm.
I think we feel this pressure to be superhuman and to be something amazing that we've seen modeled in our lives, but other people can't live up to that either. That's not attainable for others, so we shouldn't set that standard. But we can be a good church member. We can serve and we can love others and we can do the things good church members do, and then set a model that other people can also live up to, and then it works for everyone.
You could call any of our staff wives, and that's the answer we give them. We say, look, just be a good church member.
Love that.
I love that. Serving your gifting, find a place to connect.
We're not going to tell you where to serve. We're not going to tell you what to do. We're not going to tell you all that. Just be a good church. In other words, anything we would expect from any other person who says they call Milestone their home, we expect that out of our pastors' wives. Nothing more, nothing less. It's just simply be a good church member. You can say again?
No, you keep going.
I was going to say, you can almost see the pressure go away. Like it's a release of like, oh, that makes me feel so much better.
So I don't have to lead every ministry.
I don't have to lead anything. I don't have to, unless that's what God is calling you to do. No, you could serve on our hospitality team and put out coffee every Sunday, and you'd be fulfilling what we're asking you to do as a pastor's wife. Just be faithful as a church member. So that's really the expectation I put on our staff as a lead pastor. That's kind of the expectations I put on them. So
that's awesome. I feel like we have a unique situation too, because just from another viewpoint, being called to worship ministry and feeling called as a worship leader, that's kind of been tricky at times as also a pastor's wife. So I've had to learn kind of my place in that. There's been some churches we've served at that have looked at me as a valuable, like they want to pay me as a worship leader, and then there's some where it's just a servant, and I would do it either way. So to me, that's what I'm called to do, and I'm going to do it either way. But there has been times where I feel like the enemy can play with my mind or make me feel less valuable in certain circumstances, or like I'm a 2-for-1 package deal, versus if I wasn't married to a pastor and I was called to be a worship leader, would that look differently at a church? Probably, you know what I mean? So I've wrestled with that too, of also we've never had this happen, but this past weekend, we were both serving on a Sunday morning, and one of our children woke up in the middle of the night that morning, not feeling well. And immediately I know I'm the dispensable one. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know my place.
I'm not sure if the church would agree with that.
No, I know that.
They're like, we like your singing more than his preaching, though.
100%. I'm staying home with the kid. You know what I mean? Like, that's just my role. And I feel like a lot of pastor wives probably feel dispensable compared to their husbands, when really in the kingdom of God, every part is so valuable. And staying home with a sick child is actually just as valuable.
It is.
Caring for them as preaching a message, encouraging families to grow. So, those are unique situations for two people who serve in roles. And I just want to serve out of a faithfulness heart, and not I don't ever want to hinder his calling and I feel like that's my primary purpose, is to serve my family too first. And so, just weighing that is been,
I think,
kind of our unique situation.
What I've loved about you, and I've loved about our marriage, and even when we were dating, that I felt like we were a team, that when we were going to church, whatever we're doing, we did together, as the friendship was there, right? And I know this is true for you guys, but I think that's what's really grown us in ministry over the years, is that we serve together in the way God's wired us. And I know that can be tricky. Some churches are weird. They have an insecurity that they only allow certain people to do certain things, because if it doesn't fit their paradigm, they don't like it. And so I want to continue to have a culture in our church where everyone can serve in the gifting God's given them for God's glory, and not feel weird about that, not feel like they can't be excited about that, or there's a comparison between who's singing or not singing, or who's leading in kids ministry, or who's doing whatever role they feel led to do. That's not greater or lesser, but that everybody's valued. So I think that's just something we've seen
Mhm.
really, really healthy and really, really not. But what do you think churches can do to support pastors' wives better? Like what would if there were pastors listening today, and of course there are, if there's even church members, or there could be a search team listening in, how can we make it not awkward and just treat pastors' wives, like we're saying, in a healthy way, so that they want to be there long term and they want to grow their family and be a part of the church life, not just because they have to, because they really, really love it.
I say pray for them. And when you pray for people, you can't help but love them and show them grace and want them to grow. I would say when you're really genuinely praying for people, you want the best for them. So continue praying. What would you say, Holly?
I'd say to just check on us. I mean, honestly, sometimes I feel like there might be one person that ever texts me out of the whole church, just like, how are you doing? Like people, I guess, assume you're doing good and stuff. Just check on us. Be kind to our husbands and love our kids like extraordinarily well. They put up with a lot. They deal with a lot. They sacrifice a lot.
Yes.
That's good.
And yeah, it just means a lot to us as moms and pastors' wives. If you love them.
Let them know they're valuable, I would say too, and whatever gifting God has given them, and just let them know that they're seen too. And I think as a pastor's wife, I try to do that for other pastor wives and friends and ministry. When Easter was coming up, I checked in with a few friends in ministry. Like, I know this is a big Sunday. The enemy's going to be getting at us. So I just checked in with them, not just locally, but people that I know. And they just appreciated that, because we're really all, on the same team here. We're all serving together in different places, but doing the same things with people who are hurting. And I think when you pour out a lot, you really need to have people pouring back into you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'd like to add this: just don't compare the current pastor's wife with one that was here before or 20 years ago. Everybody's unique, and that's just
same for pastor.
Yeah. I mean, Jay, I mean, come on. I mean, when you plant the church, it's nice that you don't have a lot of that, but
he's the OG.
Whether it comes out like good or bad, it could be like, oh, I'm so glad you're here, or it could be like, oh, you're all right. I'll be.
So the thing with being the OG, the founding, the lead, planting pastor is one, you get the mix, and this is with every church really, but especially for a church plant, is you get the mix. You get some Christians who come along, because every church, I'll say this, and this is important because I think we misunderstand it. Every church plant needs Christians to support the church plant. Like we need a handful. That's why people develop core teams to come on. But those Christians are the ones that have the baggage of, well, this pastor did this or that or whatnot. The new believers are the ones that go, hey, I just, this is this. I can say honestly, I've never had a pastor who hasn't said that I'm not a handful. No matter where, even here, people are like, he's a handful. How do we can't contain him? We can't. He's a handful. The only pastor they know, some of them the only pastor. That's just the nature of who I am, which makes things difficult. But anyhow, I just say I'll go along in saying this when it comes to the pastors' wives and how we can love them and care for them. And I think Holly hit on it a little bit. I think Cassidy, you were hitting on it as well. As I think the pastors obviously get a lot of attention because we're in front of everybody. We talk about these things, but checking on our pastors, checking on our wives, making sure they understand the some of the things that they're going through and some of the weight that they're carrying around that they may not even know they're carrying around. Honestly, there is this weight of you feel as if everybody you reflect the pastor, and so everything you do, everything you say, everything your kid does, everything your kid says reflects the pastor, and you bear. And I heard mama bears coming out a little bit on both of you, and it wasn't a bad thing, but it's more along the lines of I want you to know that like we care for our kids. Cassie, I think you said earlier, I feel like one of my first priority in ministry is taking care of my family. I think you said something along those lines. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I know Holly's said that, and knowing that is extremely important. That you are unique, and just in knowing that you're cared for can go a long way for a pastor's wife. And so
I will say, I think our kids seeing us serve too is so important.
Mhm.
As to have your parents just pouring into the church. I mean, that is such a great model, I think, for them to see
Mhm.
in a healthy way. And so thank you both. I
Mhm.
think your just
Mhm.
I hope that my kids don't have that PK thing.
Mhm.
They don't
Yeah.
leave one day thinking, man, I was drugged to church.
Yeah. Dad had to
But
work, and he,
they want to see us joyfully serving. So
Right.
if it's not joyful,
yeah.
maybe that's when we take a step back. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And
You
I
need
think
to
it's
have.
cool. I actually think we should make a decision right here on the Pastor Pod, that every pastor should have to be a part of a church plant, because that is where
Yeah.
you know how that works. Is everybody gets to serve together in that, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
That I think it should
That's
be like a prerequisite in college or something like that. I don't know. But the things I didn't know, and to see my family, I think it's one of the greatest joys I have, is to see our family serve together.
Mhm.
Many people don't know this. My 14-year-old daughter is the one that runs our live stream. Go look at her live stream. She's
That's
the one
awesome.
that tells everybody what to do. She's on the
Mhm.
microphone saying, switch the camera, do this, do that.
I love it.
On the show.
That's great.
And one of the hardest things is, you mentioned it earlier, and it's pretty public, is we're transitioning actually from a milestone and going to take a new adventure. But Michaela, my 14-year-old, actually said it this way. She said, it's tough for me to leave Milestone because I feel like I planted Milestone.
Oh.
She did.
Wow.
No, you think about it, she did.
Good.
So did Adeline, so did Louis, so did Zachary, so did Rhett. Rhett was there the first Christmas Eve gathering we ever had.
Wow.
He was born on December 19th, and December 24th, he was in church.
Amen. That's happened.
That's right. Yeah.
I've given birth.
What were we thinking?
And then literally
I know.
led worship 3 weeks
It was
later.
Whatever it takes, right, Jay?
It was our
Whatever.
first Christmas Eve. Every number mattered. Every head mattered.
That's right. You got to get them in there. And pregnant women count as two.
Oh my goodness. That's hilarious.
But no, it really is. It really is. And so, any other thoughts you guys had when it comes to pastors' wives? And I just can't still get over the fact I'm looking at the camera and I see almost like,
Oh my goodness, we're doing the same hand motions.
you guys are your blonde hair, you're sitting like this.
Wow.
Like, I'm looking at the screen and I'm seeing Cassidy and Josh, but I'm like, that looks like Holly because she's right here. And
It's hilarious. Yeah.
I love it.
so Josh, next week we'll match just for the sake of matching. So
You know what?
You guys gotta get
I
more
need to
in
get
sync.
I need to
We're
get
in
a
sync.
Boston hoodie,
Yes.
Red Sox hoodie.
listen, the fact that it's May and I'm still wearing a hoodie is an issue. Okay, can we just talk about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
you
That's
live in
gonna
the
change.
great white frozen north.
I guess. Good.
Yeah.
Nice. We haven't seen the sun in days. So that being said, I just want to thank both Cassidy and Holly for being on the Pastor Pod. I do appreciate you guys. And Cassidy, Josh talks a ton about you and your family and how awesome you are. And you listen to the Pastor Pod, so I think you know that.
I'm a big fan, avid listener.
I pay her to listen.
I
You
do.
pay her to listen. You
I
pay her to
listen a lot while I'm editing
Okay.
photography and doing
I know.
things.
Josh tells me your feedback, and so it's really helped shape up my editing skills.
Oh man, I always good.
Cassie said she can't hear you when she's running on the treadmill. We need to get the okay.
Yeah, I know. I yeah.
That was one time.
It was
Death.
those one things that I remember, right? So
Right.
anyhow, listen, thank you guys so much for being on the Pastor Pod. Josh, it is a blast to hang out. And today I have been educated and I've learned from our spouses. And I think that is awesome. I hope you've been encouraged if you're listening in. I want to encourage you to reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. You can reach us at thepastorpod@gmail.com. We have some more exciting guests coming up. I'm really looking forward to it. There's 3 or 4 that are now on the schedule throughout the summer, and we're scheduling more and more and more. So listen back in. Our goal is to get some great, phenomenal leaders in to have some good, open, transparent conversations. But from Cassidy and Josh, Holly and myself here at the Pastor Pod, we thank you for listening in. Hope to see you back next week here on the Pastor Pod. Have a great weekend.